Colleagues, I greet you. Let's come back to our point of discussion. As the economic freedom fighters, since our founding manifesto 10 years ago, we made it very clear that in our cardinal pillars that we are advocating for building state capacity so that we can do away with the tenders. By the way, this year on the 26th of June, we'll be celebrating 10 years. So we said this thing 10 years ago, not yesterday. Why are we advocating for this total scrapping of tenders? It is our belief that the tendering system is a system that was designed to be able to provide an avenue or a platform for looting and also enriching a few people. Let's look at the tendering system. Tendering system, I'll simplify it. I'll use a very simple layman's term, but the people that are academically inclined in the supply chain will be able to interpret it in their broader way. But this is what it basically means. It means that you put a middleman in between the supplier and government. That's all it says. It creates a middleman, a middle person between the state and the supplier, whether it's a supplier of services or goods or whatever. So this phenomenon of establishing a middleman enables people to loot. That's one. So create a middle person who must also have their own share before they deliver what must be delivered. In one particular government department, a loaf of bread, when it was 10 rand, some tenderpreneur used to supply the government department for 87 rand. That's few years back. We know in some other municipalities where a toilet paper that you can buy for 4 rand because they use the lowest grade, even if it's the highest grade, you buy a roll for 7 or 5 rand. They supply the government departments one single toilet paper for 100 rand. Liter of milk, 20 rand. You can buy it for 20 rand. But we know that there are tenderpreneurs who supply the government with a liter of milk for 120. But this 100 rand or this obscene profit that they make, they then share with the people in this value chain. They want kickbacks, they want their share, etc. So it's a ripe platform and avenue for corruption. But let's take it further. If you were to look at what the tenderpreneurs would do, they would find it goes with privatization, is more or less the same thing. They would find a government department that employed 100 people. And people were working, no problem. Like in the olden days, we had a Department of Works. We had we now have Public Works Department, whereby people within municipalities and governments, provincial governments, would be employed to do all works, road works, plumbing, maintenance, employed. But now, once they outsource this service, the tenderpreneur would say, you employed 100 people. I don't need 100 people. I only need 20. So 80 people lose their jobs. Then how many families go hungry? But out of the 20 people, he will still charge the department for 10 people. No, out of the 2,400 people. There were 100 people here. He laid off 80, stays with 20 people to do 100 people's jobs. He maximizes profit, turnaround time. He will still charge the government for 200 people. One of the department, as Mvelo, when I was still in the KZN legislature, There was a security company that supplied guards, security guards, to the department. 30,000 rand per, 79,000 rand per guard. And the guards are only earning 3,500. 79,000 per guard. But the guard doesn't even get the 7,000, gets 3,500. It's criminal. It's greed. It's obscene. People maximize profit at the expense of everybody else. We're saying as the EFF, let us build state capacity. By building state capacity, you bring into the employment of the state in all three spheres, from local government, provincial government, and national government, established internal capacity so that the state will be able to do its work. How is that going to benefit the state? It's going to benefit the state through a turnaround time. It can't be that you have a pothole, but you need to issue a tender to come and close this pothole. So the tendering and procurement system through the supply chain system will take 3 months to get a contractor to close a pothole. By that time, people's cars have been damaged, people have been inconvenienced, and it will cost the same government again a lot of money through claims that comes because their cars have been damaged because the road is not fixed. So it's a double-edged sword to keep the tendering system. Whilst if we had internal capacity, once a pothole is noted, there will be quick turnaround, and we will go and deal with it. And I don't think there's anyone that is going to suffer. The tenderpreneurs are not going to suffer in any way. I know other people would say, but it's business. These people would want to do business. What must then happen to them? They must also go and look for jobs and be employed and work like everybody else. Instead of being middlemen, some of them, they take on sites, abandon the sites, and run away. Why? Because the officials who issue the tenders are pressurizing them to say, put an invoice. Even if the work is not done, put an invoice because my car is broken down. Submit an invoice for work that is never done. Submit an invoice because I need to buy new furniture for my house. There's a lot of corruption there. But the people that suffers the most is the taxpayer who does not get the services on time. Two is the workers who do not have job security and stability because they then become contracted for the duration of the tender period. We know that some tenderpreneurs, the minute the first invoice pays out, they buy the top of the range cars and they are unable to pay the workers at the end of the month because the person that awarded them the tender have taken their share, but they've also want to upgrade their lifestyle. They buy all these materialistic things. And when it comes for workers to be paid, workers are not paid. So workers are suffering. Taxpayers are suffering. Government infrastructure cannot be maintained. As a result, we're all suffering. Hence, we call for total scrapping of tenders, build state capacity so that we can have better turnaround time. We can save a lot of money for these markups because people put ridiculous markups. But you can't blame them. It's because in the value chain, there's politicians that must eat, there's officials that must eat from the same money that is supposed to go to this guy who must then take care of the workers. But also we know that tenderpreneurs do not provide the same level of benefits in terms of whether it's pension, tax, UIF, workmen's compensation, etc. They don't do that because you're contracted. You're contracted for 3 months, or if they realize that you are above the 3 months, they'll fire you, recycle you, bring somebody else because theirs is to maximize profit so that they can pay for their greed and maintain this artificial, fake, materialistic lifestyle. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, of course. Thank you, colleagues. For those who just joined us, we have Mr. Khosa, who is a member of parliament, former chairperson of the EFF in KZN, and also former member of the legislature. He's currently a member of parliament in a national parliament, sorry, and also sitting in the portfolio committee of police. I see there are a number of people who just joined now, so I thought let me reintroduce Rob Khosa. And also we are tackling the question of total scrapping of the tender system. As you have heard his views, obviously I won't say right now he has been sanctioned by his party to be here because I hijacked him. So it will be depending on him if he is compatible with saying that. But let me allow the questions from the colleagues.
One must be careful about the tender system. It applies right across the world in all the countries. However, and one must also acknowledge the fact that it does not matter in which country it applies, it has the same problems, if we can put it that way. Look at Britain at the moment with the COVID tenders coming out. What our speaker said about the bread prices is one of the first problems that exist. In our current system, we say we give 80 points to price. However, when you start verifying the price being offered, right, the evaluation committee says it's not our responsibility. So you get a price for 87 Rand for a loaf of bread, which costs 10 Rand, and they say it's the cheapest price. It's the cheapest bid price, but it's not the cheapest price. It is a ridiculous price. There's no due diligence done on the price to be acceptable. The next point, the next issue, which has also never been really addressed, it's been addressed now throughout certain countries, but I think we are only at the starting point, and that is the beneficial ownership. Who owns the tenderer? And this is where the tenderpreneur starts running into difficulties. When you break down and you trace through the holding companies and the front companies to find the real person, you then can determine whether they've got the capacity and knowledge to do the job. The third one, and Sean raised up the issue saying that supplier relation management sounds so unethical in public procurement, but it's something that applies to both public and private. And that is, if you do not know your supplier, and I'm not talking about the winning bidder, if you don't know your suppliers, how do you know they've got the capacity to do the work that you require for it? And that draws to the question, and I know Treasury has retracted the instruction note on session and that, but if you look at the German public procurement system, they've got a clause that states that if your winning bidder cedes or subcontracts 100% of the contract work to a third party, the contract is immediately cancelled. Where you identify that the winning bidder is a frontman, is a tenderpreneur, with no support, unethical practices, basically he's ripping you off, then it falls under the same clause, termination by fraud and corruption. These, and the last one is the question of evaluation stroke specification. Here, and I've been struggling with this for a long time, here the question is, how do you evaluate to ensure that you have the right capability and capacity to go through to the price competition? This is the area where one uses the specification to eliminate all the people you don't want to have it. Again, it's something that happens in all countries. And whatever system we implement, right, we still going to have to follow through in identifying the capability and the capacities. In housing the resources runs in the same issue of capacity and capability. How do you know that the people can do the job and how can do the job effectively? And my last point, the one that I'm still completely puzzled, as our speaker said, right? An invoice is irrelevant. It's the delivery of the product and the verification of the delivery that is critical. Yet, and I agree with him, in nearly all cases, people are not interested in saying, I've received the goods. They just want to invoice, sign the invoice and pay the person. When you check what's been delivered for the value of that invoice, the answer is we just deal with invoices. We don't concern about delivery notes. Delivery note is the same thing as the invoice. It's not. It is the verification that the work has been performed at the quality you have stated. Whatever system we look at, these difficulties are going to exist in that replacement system as well. And we need to have an open discussion on these points. We cannot have the situation where it's a lowest tender, 87 Rand for a loaf of bread, and then say that that's acceptable. Logic dictates that crack. You could, as the speaker said, you can buy it from 10 Rand. We need to apply logical thought to address these issues to provide fair service at a fair price to our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I had a network glitch when you started to come in. I have also tried to grab some of your comments. Just wanted to also understand on your beginning. Are you saying the approach that our guest speaker is putting forward is a way to go? I didn't get that, but are you saying it is a way to go? However, we need to try and make sure that we do not kick the can down the road, or we shift the responsibility, because obviously, if you do internal capacity without dealing with the actual corruption, you may also find corruptions while you are doing the internal capacity in a different form now, not necessarily in a tender process. Is that your point, Brian?
Exactly. With corruption, and to be fair here to that, if you look at the international measurement standards of corruption in government in South Africa, we're sitting at the mid-mark, not the highest, not the lowest, we're at mid-mark. And the countries there range from North America, etc. The thing with corruption is it requires two people. I've got to corrupt you, and you've got to accept that I'm corrupting you. And it is about what our moral values are. It's not really about codes or that. So whatever system we choose, we have to look at the technical issues, as I've listed earlier, as well as how do we make it transparent to people. Currently, every country has got rules, laws, and thousands of pages on corruption management system, OECD, World Bank, United Nations, you name it. Corruption's been here for 1,000 years. It hasn't gone away. It hasn't changed in its level. It only can be managed by having an objective system and having transparency through there. We all need to form part of a system to ensure that it does not occur. Whether we bring it in-house or we externalize it, the issues essentially don't really disappear. They will only be improved if we address those issues. And I'm sorry if I used the example of the bread, but that is typical of the type of issues we have. You know, we know that bread costs 10 Rand, so why do you accept a bid for 87 Rand a pot?
Yeah.
We know that the security guards have been paid 3,000 Rand, but we're paying 79,000 Rand. Yet there are other ways of dealing with the issue. And we seem to not innovate, if I can put it that way, in mechanisms and processes to achieve the best results. The past has not been very kind to us. The past has given us systems, good systems, but they've got weaknesses. We need to look at those weaknesses and make sure they are addressed in any alternative systems to replace that. The tender system is just 3 quotes or bid process through there, but it's a system about people. In-house is about people.
Yeah,
Capacity building.
Yeah. Let me stop you there, Brian. I think you have said the mouthful. Thank you very much for that. Mr. Khosa, you want to come in on that before I go to Andries? You want to comment on Brian's comment?
Thank you. I'm just going to be very short. I agree with the previous speaker that it's about people. But yes, you see this thing of saying, because I mean it's immoral. It doesn't matter which way you look at it. You say, okay, 3 bids. Okay, this is the highest. This is the highest bidder. This is the lowest bidder. Here's the specification. But you don't care about the price. It's a bid. It's a bid. That's the law. It says take 3, get 3 quotes. Take the lowest or the middle one, depending on who meets the specifications. It's wrong. But the reason I'm advocating for insourcing these things, it's different because here you will have these employees employed by the state. It's easy to hold them accountable, and their guards they would up their guards. Yes, we don't say they cannot be corrupted, because the fact of the matter is that in this corruption issue, there's a corrupter, for lack of a better word, and a corruptee. The corruptor or the corruptee, it happens that the corrupter is the state official or the politician approaches this guy and say, we know this work will cost 1 million, but bid for 1 million. And then they do cover bidding, and then we give him for 10 million when we know that the job is going to cost 1 million. Thereafter, we share the loot, the spoils. So it's the guy inside who's corrupting the guy outside, or the guy outside would approach the guy inside to corrupt him. But if we are here, but over and above that, we've eliminated the middleman. It doesn't matter the level. Well, it matters the level of corruption, but at least the middleman is not there. So this ridiculous markup falls off, even if there'll be corruption in between. But at least we know we bought this from there at this price, and that's it. The next one, corruption, yes, it's true. It's the oldest profession in the world. Others have made it a profession. For instance, if you look, there were 2 people in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. Then the snake appears from nowhere. It corrupts Eve to believe that, not to believe what she's been taught. Then corruption started. So everyone else, if we believe that everyone came from Adam and Eve, corruption started in the Garden of Eden. Even during the days of Jesus Christ, Judas Iscariot sold him for 3 shillings. That was part of corruption, because somebody corrupted him to say, accept this money, sell him out this way. So it's an oldest profession, but it does not make it right. What can we do, morally speaking, to deal with this issue? Because this provides a conducive environment for corruption. Thank you.
I see you are tracing it back to the origins. Quite funny, quite funny. Just a quick one, and I probably you can respond quickly. I don't want to delay Andries though. What do you say to someone who's saying your point when you said it's easier to hold those who are employed by the state accountable because they are at your disposal? What do you say to someone who's saying your points that you are making are already effective, or they have been effected in some of the organs of state? They've been insourcing, and in some of the organs of state, the people who are supposed to deliver are not delivering, and they are not being held accountable. They are in the system, and you've seen in the various social media platforms pictures of the municipal workers sleeping on top of graves, not working, policemen taking bribes, your traffic cops doing all sorts of things. So they are already in the system, but they are not being held accountable. What do you say on that? Then after that, Andries can continue and raise the question.
Thank you, sir. But it's very simple. You know what causes this again is corruption. If I employ you and I'm your superior, and there are consequences management for wrongdoing, I should be able to swiftly act and deal with you. But if I'm part of the chain of corruption, I won't be able to hold you accountable. One other thing that makes consequence management difficult, particularly within government departments, is the cadre deployment. I want to be elected in the next conference, so I bring in a lot of my other cadres and foot soldiers of my organization. I employ them here. And my girlfriend's children and my girlfriends and my concubines, I employ them here. When they start doing wrong things, I can't hold them accountable because that's a child of my comrade. That's a comrade of mine who must then go and influence people to vote for me in the next conference. Cadre deployment and nepotism is what is killing government and defeating consequences management. Thank you.
Yes, Andries.
Good morning. Yes, the weaknesses pointed out is definitely noted, and definitely something needs to be done about it. We must also consider that the procurement system is a system, and systems have different levels of maturity. And unfortunately, I think the rate of this system maturing is not really been up to standard. I do believe the reform needed is really focusing on those weaknesses. I just want to point out a couple of the weaknesses discussed. One is, for instance, the very expensive bread scenario. And there's two sides to the story in that sense, if I can say so much. As a provincial treasury, what we've done is we've issued a provincial price index for high volume, low value items like bread and normal groceries. And then we basically allow certain margins. Why would we allow certain margins? Is you and me, we go to Pick n Pay and we buy that bread and we pay. These days they are quite expensive, like 17 or 18 rand already. But your transaction that you incur with Pick n Pay is a COD, cash on delivery kind of transaction. You're not allowed to leave that shop without paying them. Where the government payment systems is not designed to interact with the retail sector. And at the end of the day, we need tenderpreneurs to actually buy the bread for us from Pick n Pay and then deliver it to the hospital, because our transactional system is not designed to interact with the retail system. And this is a lot of the issues that we actually need to call the spade and start fixing the weaknesses in the government transactional systems, so that it can interface correctly with the market, and that forces of supply and demand starts dictating the prices we pay. As institutional buyers, the government's supposed to pay less than the retail price for products, and obviously we're paying more. And if you go to the procurement practitioners, you will actually find they're not empowered to actually make decisions and be more agile and operate the way the private sector tends to operate. Although, yes, corruption is still going to be around for a while. And I think the key word that has been brought up around corruption is accountability and taking action against people that misbehaves. But I think just scrapping the system, that's throwing the baby out with the water. We have to sort of rethink the plan. And try to be the change and tweak the current system till it actually works. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andries. Mr. Khosa, just a quick one. You've also highlighted a lot of state capacity requirements. State capacity requirements. We need to build state capacity to deal with issues of service delivery mostly. I think your comments were mostly based on the service delivery. But there are the other things that you buy. I'm happy that you made an example of a loaf of bread. The other thing that government would buy, things like your operational product, your stationery. Let's make an example of a dishwashing liquid or any sort of detergents that government would buy in order to disinfect or deal with their office space, cleanliness, putting a dishwashing liquid as an example. How do you anticipate that to move from the shelf of the retail, it's Spar, Pick and Pay, or whoever is selling that, to the premises of the government? Can you put us in that space? How can we get this product without going via the middleman or using a tender system? How can we get this product to our offices and use it?
No, thank you very much. You see the issue of, I think I like what Adrian is saying, to say we need to tweak the system and make it work. But Adrian, to be honest with you, from Treasury, this system has been in place for 30 years. You've been tweaking it until it becomes untweakable. It's still not functioning. So we need to completely relook. For instance, take your medium, some of you guys, I know you've got here professionals who run small, medium companies or even big companies. What do you do in your office space? You are an advocate, you are a doctor, you are a small firm of accountants. How do you procure these goods? You procure these goods through a system. Why would you have these supply chain managers and a whole lot of support staff there trying to make a system that rips off the taxpayer, trying to make it work when it is actually is not working? If we must change the system, we must change the system. But my answer is very simple. It says, what do you do in your small and medium business office? The government system is such that it can be corrupted. But what you do in your small office, you buy those things directly. You get someone to go to Macro, Pick and Pay, or wherever to buy those things and deliver them. You might have a challenge on bigger, more expensive, elaborate things, but it is doable. Look at what your medium, small offices do. They still procure those things cheaper, much better. Turnaround time is quicker. Not this elaborate, long thing that drags along. I don't think there's much we can do really to tweak this thing any further, except that we must change and do what the private sector is doing in terms of procurement.
Yeah. Just maybe an additional question. It sounds like a double barrel question. Now that we are going direct, just like our I would say our homes or our small businesses that we run, we just go and buy stuff and then we use them. Let's say we are doing that as government, and there are new upcoming service providers or new players in the market that are trying to venture into the space of this business. Obviously, the new players will not be able to offer any sort of discounts to whoever is buying, because they're still trying to make themselves stable. Would you say then, as government, if we're going to try and save money and buy to the cheapest, we should be, are you saying we must always go to your Pick and Pays, your macros, and sideline those emerging I would say suppliers who are producing, not necessarily being middlemen, who are producing these products, but they're still expensive because they're still trying to enter into the market? Are you saying we should sideline them? What is your
not
view on
really.
that?
Not really. We don't necessarily have to go to established businesses. We can still go to those co-ops and buy directly from them. Because what is happening at the moment is that you find that there will be a known tenderpreneur that is connected. This tenderpreneur will still go to those mamas and gogos and who are try working in some backyard, procure those things at 5 rand and supply the government at 50 rand. It happens. So it would do as well that if we still have got co-ops, that co-op must still produce, but we must buy from that co-op. We don't need a tenderpreneur who will go and buy from those co-ops, collect these things, and then supply us at a huge markup. All I'm saying, it doesn't matter where you procure, cut the middleman out, because the middleman is the one that pushes up these prices. If we must buy from a co-op, let's go buy from the co-op direct instead of going through a middle person, whether it's a big shop, retail, or whatever, but let's go direct.
Sure. Motau Muloma?
No, thanks, Sanela. I just have 2 questions for Bob Khosa. The first one is if they were to be successful in scrapping the system, what would be the process steps and the cost associated with the change? You would appreciate Ndate Khosa that there is a human body system within the state in the tender space. So how are you going to deal with that should you be successful in that? That is the first question. And maybe on that question is, are we not dealing with the symptoms than the cause of the existing system? And second one will be, if you are not successful in the scrapping, as you know, the procurement bill is proceeding, how are you going to then assist in improving the a procurement bill if you still feel that it is not addressing the concerns that you have? Thank you.
Thanks, Bob Khosa,
Thank you.
Can come in?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Let us start with the first question, the issue of human factor. If we're to change, there would still be people in the system, but externally, let's kill the middle, literally. Cut the middleman, let's procure direct. That's one. Number 2, even if the bill was to proceed, Adrian had indicated earlier that what they've tried to do in the Eastern Cape, although maybe the outcomes are not visible, because that's one of the provinces where yeah. But anyway, all I'm saying is that if it proceeds, let us be very strict in terms of the price margins. Because this thing of just letting it go to say that, okay, 3 codes, lowest bidder, specifics, we take you, without actually putting price margins. It's irresponsible. It's almost close to criminality, if I may say that, because it allows for exorbitant prices. I think there has to be, we must narrow it down even to a percentage, to say that you cannot go beyond this percentage. If we are to open space for players in the tenderpreneur space, let us be specific in terms of saying, for these goods, you can only play within this margin. If it's your 10%, 10%, if it's your 15%, 15%, but it cannot be a free for all. I know that here and there with certain items, that is the issue, but we need to put a very strict emphasis. It can't be that because it's taxpayers' money, it's government money, we just allow a free for all. Because if we were very strict in terms of the margins, even those that would want to delve into corruption and exploit this space are going to see, there's no money here, man, we can't make money. Let's just leave this thing and try something else. But once it's open like that, it's open to abuse. So in terms of transitioning is by changing the law. We as lawmakers need to look at this and say, how can we create a transitional interim arrangement as we move from scrapping of tenders and towards state capacity and direct procurement? It is doable. There are laws, yes, but laws are man-made and laws can still be amended or scrapped. That's why you've got lawmakers. But lawmakers that are captured by certain interests, then it becomes very difficult for them to change systems that fit them.
Maybe while we move to, trying to wrap up, Mr. Khosa, I know, Jonathan, what do you say to someone who's saying, obviously, this process or a tender process has been there for some time, back in the 80s. You remember that we had a state tender board of the 1980s, and the tender processes were already there. Obviously, back then it might not have been servicing the general public. The only few that were benefiting in the process, and it evolved to the current one, which is characterized by preferential procurement, which largely involves the middlemen. What do you say to someone who's saying supply chain management has developed itself to creating its own officials or professionals, your supply chain management practitioners, as you know, equivalently to, the journalist? I'll make an example. What do you say to someone who's saying, are you saying, should journalists be found to be more corrupt, we would have to scrap that profession and try another alternative of dishing out the news? I'm just putting it out there, a typical question of anyone who could ask, they can ask.
Okay,
I'm not sure whether we are on mute, Bob Khosa.
Where?
Sorry, you were on mute, yes.
Yeah, apologies. What I'm saying, the case I'm trying to make here is that, yes, tenders and supply chain has been there from the 80s. But here's the difference. We can hide and say at the time it used to supply few people, etc. The system is the same. Here's the difference. In the 80s, if I can be more racialistic, because I must mention it, when it was white apartheid government, when there was 10 rand on the table, they stole 1 rand and put the 9 rand into service delivery. The current government, this democratic government, when there's 9 and 10 rand on the table, they steal 9.50 and leave 50 rand for service delivery. And they'll still chase you for the 50, and they still demand a cut from the 50 cent that they gave you. That's putting it broadly. So in the previous government used to steal 1 rand out of the 10 rand. These ones are stealing 9.50 and then still chase you for the 50 rand. They still want a cut. So that's why we are here we are today. That's one. Number two, I'm not saying they scrap the supply chain management. You can still have a supply chain management that is internal. Cut the exterior middle person and buy direct and still use the same system of a supply chain. It might be smaller. You might not need such an elaborate scheme of things, but you could still develop the profession. But the only difference is done internal, like you would do in your own smaller Nyana office. It's still supply chain when you procure goods. Thank you.
Sure. Let's take the last hand. Jonathan, come through.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, Stanella, and thank you, Honorable Khosa. You've actually just summed it up very nicely to say about the 950 and the 9 rands, which is really true. But what I would just like to say, it's exactly as you've said there, we must cut the middleman, but there's some industries and some commodities whereby some companies, organizations cannot go directly. And yes, we have to cut, or maybe most probably cut and cap what we're going out on and what we would like to receive, especially when you go out on strategic commodities, coal, your diesel, and all of that. I heard we shy away from those commodities, and we were staying with the easier ones, whereby it's much easier to conversate on, and we get dragged by those commodities, and it seems so easier to discuss them. But as I've said earlier on, I just like the point where you make that of 950. As it is with the municipalities, tar the roads, don't close the potholes. It will be the other way around. They'll close the pothole and not tar the road and chow the rest of that money which is supposed to tar the road with. That getting just my last point, because I can see we don't have time. Removing supply chain management. It's almost like I'm going to take it back to what your one of the politicians was saying the other day. We must bring back the guys who have done all those things. They were in the right positions most probably, but also what we have to look in. I will not take my child to a general practitioner to remove tonsils. I will rather take a specialist and remove the tonsils. So what I'm saying is, like, not everybody's cut out for supply chain management. You have to go also, there's means, there's ways. You have to go study. You have to go and understand how to apply policies when procuring. You have to understand what it is that your company is looking for. Understand those policies. That's important. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Let me allow you, Mr. Khosa, if you want to comment on what Jonathan have said, and also to allow you to wrap up. I know we have taken a lot of your time. You have given us 45 minutes, and allow you to wrap up so that we can close.
No, thank you very much. On what Jonathan is saying, Jonathan, I agree with you, but you will still have these practitioners, highly educated, highly skilled, but instead of having them out there, you'll have them inside. They'll still be employed by government. They'll have to pass all these tests and their skills, etc., etc. No one is going to be left out. But in wrapping up, Sanele, thank you very much for providing this platform. I hope I've been able to state our part. But anytime you need us, we will be available. You are correct. I must put a disclaimer to say that I'm not mandated by the organization to come and speak here, but it's our policy. We're advancing policy, we're influencing policy, and we will continue to push for a system that says build state capacity and cut out the middlemen. Tenders are a huge source of corruption. So thank you very much, everyone, for having us. I really appreciate it. Thank you.